Welcome to the Real Estate Syndication Show. Whether you are a seasoned investor or building a new real estate business, this is the show for you. Whitney Sewell talks to top experts in the business. Our goal is to help you master real estate syndication. And now your host, Whitney Sewell.
This is your daily real estate syndication show. I'm your host, Whitney Sewell. Today, our guest is Steve Rozenberg. Thanks for being on the show, Steve.
Thanks for having me, Whitney. Appreciate it.
No, I'm honored to have you on the show. And just from a little bit of our discussion, I'm excited to get into our talk today and learning more about you and the success that you've had and how you've got there, because I know it's going to be very valuable to the listeners. And I wanted to remind the listeners before we get started to go to Life Bridge Capital and go to the Contact Us page and sign up. I'd love to have a call with you. And through that, we'll schedule a time to speak and help you any way I can. But a little about Steve. He's a commercial airline pilot who turned investor after 9/11 threatened his, quote, secure, end quote, livelihood. And I think a lot of us can relate to that, just thinking we're in this secure corporate position, and trying to move into real estate now that we've understood or got a greater understanding that it's not as secure as we thought. He's owned apartment buildings and many single family homes and wholesaled over 100 properties. And he's been in this real estate game for a while now and just really crushing it. After meeting his business partner, Pete, they failed miserably as investors thanks to terrible tenants, worse neighborhoods, and zero structure. It took them years, but with help, they have figured out how to leverage each other's strengths. He's currently on 2 podcast shows, Landlord Survival and Lions Leadership Den. So Steve, thank you so much for your time today. I appreciate, your time this morning early, and being on the show. And, I wanted to tell the listeners also, I wanted to give them this, because Steve has a property management company. I just thought this was very impressive. Has a property management company that's managing over 1,000 properties while working full time. And so there's not many people that I've heard that, that can say something like that. So, Steve, give the listeners a little more about, who you are, and let's jump into how you manage something like that while working full time.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I appreciate it. And yeah, I've learned how to be I don't want to say a task master, but I'd probably say a delegate master for delegating stuff. So yeah, my story began on 9/11. I was an airline pilot, and I still am. I work for a major airline. And basically the safe, secure job that I thought I had on September 10th of 2001 pretty much evaporated on 2001, 9/11. And what I realized was that safe, secure job was anything but, because on September 13th, about 3 days later, I was delivered a furlough notice that basically was saying, thanks for playing, but we don't think we're going to need you anymore, your services, and you're going to be out on the street with 100,000 other airline pilots just like you. And so I realized that safe, secure job really was anything but. And as a matter of fact, it was actually more dangerous because I was so specialized in what I did. I really didn't have skills to do anything else. And so luckily, I never did lose my job. I came within 30 of the bottom of getting furloughed. But it taught me a very valuable lesson. And while I still am a pilot and I still love flying and I love everything about that, I also know that it's a job. And I know at any point I could get a notice that says, hey, we're going out of business. We made a bad financial move, whatever it is. And so I've realized the how vulnerable you can be, which is why I started buying real estate. I started flipping properties, wholesaling properties, and got a lot of, did very well with that because I was really negotiating, really. I wasn't actually taking possession. I was wholesaling contracts. Got enough money and bought an apartment complex with my business partner still to this day. We sold that, and then I started buying some houses and made some very tactical errors on that. Kind of we're the smartest kids on the block because we just made a lot of money selling an apartment complex. Challenge is what we had, and we started buying a lot of stuff. And they really were not good properties. When I say not good properties, they were low-income properties. And it's not that those are bad. They just did not fit our business model. And because we didn't have a business model, it didn't fit anything. And so we thought they would be passive, and they weren't. Anyways, that led to us having to figure out how to manage them, which we did. That led us to getting other investors wanting us to manage their properties, which we did. And one of the best things we actually did was we got a business coach before we even realized we had a business, and basically just did everything that the business coach told us. Was very big in investing in ourselves, self-development, understanding business model structure. and grew a company within 7 years. We manage about $160 million in assets. We collect about $1.6 million in a month in rent. It's all single family properties, which is obviously has its challenges geographically. We're in 3 cities. We're in Houston, Dallas, and Fort Worth, Texas. And we're just growing through sound business structure. And the way that we've been able to do that, like we were talking before the show, is we've understand the use of leverage, and I've understand how to put right person, right seat in any structure. And the way that we do that is we offload things to virtual assistants. And we offload specific tasks that we need done, which everyone knows VA, virtual assistant, is kind of the buzzword nowadays, but we've actually learned how to master it from an operational level, which is very, very tough. And so that's kind of where we're at today. And we're just plugging along, growing, leaps and bounds, and dominating as much as possible.
Awesome. Wow. There's so many things there I'd love for us to, dive into. I know we won't have time to get to everything, but you had a need, right? You had a need or I think you partnered, with this guy, and you all had some problems, right? And it pushed you to learn this business a little better, pushed you to get a coach. And we talked about that on many shows, just the importance of having a coach, a mentor, somebody like that. I mean, it's so crucial. And, some of the top players in any industry, they all have a coach, and sometimes 2 or 3 coaches, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at Tiger Woods, Michael Jordan. I mean, all the best in the world. Were they the best because they were the best, or were they the best because they were coached? And so you can have any, you can say it any way you want, but the reality is this is not a singular sport. Investing is not a singular sport. Running investment properties is not a singular sport. It's a matter of, it's like a general. A general doesn't win a war, his troops do. And so people need to, I think the biggest challenge we all have when we get involved in, real estate or syndication or anything, everybody thinks that what they do is relative to how smart they are or how good they are. And it's not, people mistake progress for movement. And I think a lot of us think that because we're busy or we want to be the smartest in the room, sometimes that's not the best position to be in. Sometimes shutting up and listening and taking smarter advice from people that have been down that path is the better way to go, or at least for me it was. And I'm very humble that if I see someone smarter than me, I'm at the front of the row, and I'll be their best student, because I want to learn from those people because they have done something that I haven't. And I am not the smartest person. I'm an airline pilot. I tell people, I mean, I've been fortunate enough that we've grown our company. I have a lot of the ability to travel. I do a lot of speaking around the United States as well as Australia on property management, on investing. But the reality is the only reason I can do that is because I have the team behind me. And I was smart enough to say, I'm not smart enough. How do I do this? And that's something people have a challenge with, I think.
Yeah, I'm not where I'm at because I'm the smartest person at doing everything that we have to do. It's not possible. And you have to figure that out at some point, that you're going to hire people to specialize in certain parts of the business. But I'd love to get into, how you've started to do this. Help us to be that master delegator, like you were talking about. You all learn to understand how to delegate, making sure the correct person is in that seat. How do we do that?
Sure. Well, it starts with, it sounds boring, but it starts with the basics of really, what is the goal? Like, people get involved in investing, and as well as I do, people get involved in apartments or houses, and nobody really has a goal or an end destination as to what all of this real estate does for them. And so when I ask people, when people come to me and they say, Steve, I want to start investing, I'll ask them why. Like, what's the reason? Because you're a doctor, you're an engineer, you're whatever. It's not for the money right now. So what is it? What is that going to give you? Because if you don't have a goal and you don't have a final destination, I can't help you get there. Because buying apartments, buying houses, flipping, those are not goals. That is the strategy that is going to carry you to that goal. So I think a lot of times our definitions are mistaken, where we think owning an apartment complex is the goal. That's not the goal. That's the strategy that eventually is going to get you somewhere. And so I think that, very, very rudimentary, I would say, sit down before you even buy a single door and figure out, why am I doing this? What is the goal in life? Is it to pass down to my children as a legacy? Is it to live off the cash flow? What is that? And identify that. And then from there, once you know the goal, then you create the strategy to get you to the goal. So for example, if you said, hey, our goal is to get to Disneyland today, I would say, okay, the strategy is what freeways we're going to take to get us to Disneyland, because Disneyland is the end destination. And so a lot of people don't do that. I was one of those people that I just got on the freeway and started driving northbound when Disneyland was westbound. And I was just driving along and I didn't know where I was going. And they said, where are you going? I said, I don't know. I'll figure it out on the road. Well, you're going the wrong direction. And which means you're spending a lot of time doing movement without being progressing towards the goal. So I think that, again, I think thinking is more important than doing. And a lot of times people are so focused on the how do I do it, they don't really think about the why. Why am I doing this? And I think that if people did that more, that would be the basis to even just start this whole thing off from there. It would be a very, I know it doesn't sound fun, it doesn't sound sexy, but that's the reality of investing.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with you more. And I tell people, or like when I'm speaking at meetups or groups or events, whatever, and I talk about your why, and I always say, a few years ago, when I heard somebody get up and talk about the importance of your why and figuring out, why you're doing this, like I was like, come on, let's get to the meat and potatoes. Like, teach me something here. Like, I'm going to go network for a while.
I don't want that stuff.
Yeah, tell me how to do it, right? Yeah. That was my thought process, but after a few more years, I'm better understanding. I'm not there yet, none of us have arrived, right? But,
Sure.
I have a much better understanding of the importance of my why, and just being able to remember every day, like, why am I doing this? Why am I spending this many hours, making this business happen and doing all these things? And it's so important. But I love how you started with the goal and then figuring out, why are we doing this? And then you're going to reverse engineer it, right? You're going to figure out, okay, how do we get there? Like you're talking about, the road signs and figuring out what road to take. And a lot of times that coach is going to be that helps. It sounds like you're coaching people in that, saying, okay, well, why are you doing this? Helping people think through just the importance of that. And because I didn't have that, initially, until I hired a coach as well. So go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, and then, at that point, once you know your strategy and you know what you're doing, then, when you're looking at a deal, you can first of all decide, does that deal align with my goal? And is that in line with my strategy? So, you do the syndications, and people always ask me, well, should I do it or should I not? I'm like, I don't know what your goal is. If you're going westbound and your goal is northbound, then I would say, don't do that. The other thing I think a lot of times people get involved in deals, especially partnerships. And I ask them too, I go, have you guys talked about the divorce? Meaning, have you had that discussion of, if we have to divorce, what do we do? And they say, oh, no, this is my cousin. Like, we're related. I'm like, that's even more of the reason that you need to have that discussion. That's like, this is business. And I think a lot of times where I'm going with this is people don't realize that when they're owning a piece of real estate, they are buying a business. Now, a lot of times they don't realize it's a business, and that's why it fails. But, I tell them, I say, 4 walls and a roof is not going to make you successful. It's not going to get you wealthy. It's the business running inside that 4 walls and the roof. And if you do not feed that business correctly, and you do not leverage it right, and you don't do the right things, and I don't know if you've ever had this, but I have, when you have a lot of real estate and it is not going well, and you have bills due, and you don't know how you're going to make those bills and pay them, it's not a very fun feeling. And that's the, hey, let's figure it out as we go model, which I did. And I tell you what, I tell people, if you've never been in that position and you've never bled that or walked that walk, it is not a nice place to be. So I want to avoid people by saying, look, think before your money goes hot and you actually own something and you go, oh my God, what did I do? And so that's something that I think is very important when it comes to real estate.
Wow. Well, give us a couple pointers how you have structured that business model now. I know we can't elaborate on everything, but give us a couple of very important things to help us, get our business structure in place and to develop that system like you have.
Sure. So one of the biggest things I've learned is right person, right seat. And so we have been able to scale our business. And when you own a business and you have staff, which we don't sell a widget, right? We sell services when you own real estate. We've understood that staffing costs could be the most expensive thing. So understanding the roles, understanding the job duties, understanding KPI, key performance indicators, all those things help you identify the role. Once you can identify the role, then you could look and say, okay, who needs to do this? Does this need to be me? Can this be someone else? Or could this even be a virtual assistant? And so we've learned how to scale our business by using virtual assistants. And in our company, we have about 60% of our business is outsourced through virtual assistants. We get them from Mexico, which is different. A lot of people get them from Philippines, Asia, India, all those other things. We like that. Actually, we started a company that we actually place them for people. But it really is a matter of, bringing your cost structure down and having something that's scalable, that you can deliver the same level of service. So for example, if I own an apartment complex, does it make sense for a tenant to call me to say, I'm locked out of my house? Probably not the right person they should be calling, but it still needs to be answered. So we've learned how to take that. I don't want to pay someone $70,000 a year as a property manager, or whatever you pay them, to answer that question. Because the real question behind that they never get to could be a potential lawsuit that's coming, or something that has to be answered. So it's a matter of, right person, right seat, and getting that scalability with, whether it's virtual assistants or however you want to do it. It really is a matter of really thinking about the business model and go, okay, is that the right person to do that role? Because if not, your expenses go up and now your profit margin goes down. And so with the use of virtual assistants, we have found that we've been able to bring our cost structure from 59% of payroll down to 33% of payroll. So when you're looking at the amount of revenue we're doing, it actually starts becoming the number gets large. And so it's really a matter of what's the best use of your time and how should you be spending your day, doing or thinking. And I think for us and everyone probably listening to this podcast, they should focus more on the thinking part and not as much the doing part. That's just my opinion, but that's how I've learned to be more successful.
Okay. So I've done numerous shows on VAs, even personally, because I've used them for a long time. So, I'm not going to ask the questions about when should we hire one and those things, because, I tell everybody you need one today.
Absolutely.
But I do want to ask you, the tasks, like give me some tasks that you outsource that, is just really taking that burden off your shoulders. Give me numerous tasks that you are able to outsource, even to people in another country like Mexico.
Yeah, sure. So to give you an example, our whole maintenance division that answers calls from tenants, talks to the vendors, talks to our owners, is in Mexico. Everything is handled in Mexico. Our property managers do not even deal with maintenance. So we get about 900 service tickets a month, and it's all done in Mexico. All lease inbound inquiries in Mexico. All new investor leads. We get about 200 leads a month that come in from people that want management services. They go to Mexico. Mexico takes them, they upload them to the CRM system. They create the management agreements. They do the CMA analysis. They upload them to the profile so that the salesperson can just go close doors. Anything that has to do with tenant ledgers, owner ledgers, all basic accounting is done in Mexico. They don't hit the enter button. That's done up here, but they take care of all the ledgers. As we know, it's a very time consuming doing that. We also, any tenant relations, whenever a tenant calls, they're the forward facing part of the company. So whenever a tenant calls, how do I log into my portal? Why do I have to pay my rent this month? How do I do this? That is done in Mexico. So it's the 80-20 rule, because 80% of the stuff that comes in, I don't want to say is a waste of time. It has to be answered, but it doesn't have to be answered by the property manager, because what happens is the property managers, they're very reactive. So a 5-minute interruption, so a 5-minute phone call is equal to 23 minutes of lost time. So if a property manager gets 10 phone calls a day, that's 230 minutes. Half the day is gone through interruptions. And that's when you go, what do you do all day? And they say, I don't know, I'm just busy answering calls. But the reality is they're not focused. So a lot of these things, they have to be answered, but not by them. So like I said, maintenance, leasing, all of our social media, all of that is done in Mexico. And people think that nobody could do it as good as me. No one could do this. The reality is they probably don't have the right systems, and it shines a weakness on their own company and a weakness on their own lack of systems and structure. And that's why they can't outsource it. So it's a little humbling, because when you outsource it, you have to hand that over to someone and you have to give them a nice clean bow wrapped up and say, here you go. And if they don't have that, they're not going to be able to do the task. And you go, oh, it doesn't work. Give it back. I'll do it myself. The reality is you probably did not train them correctly, and you did not give them the right skill set.
Well, you read my mind. I was going to ask you about training them because, all these tasks are very important, right? And
Yeah.
if we don't train them, just like you just said, I mean, it's not going to be done well. And then we're going to be doing it again. And then all of a sudden our time is gone again. And we're not spending time on the thinking and the important stuff. We're back to doing those tasks. So, give us some tips on training them to do these very specific tasks. And, and are those delegated to specific people, or can, say, one VA do numerous of these things at the same time?
They can. So they can do numerous tasks. What we've learned is the bigger you get, the more vertical that VA should be. Meaning, if they're doing one task, so we have one VA, for example, all they do is lease violations, because there's enough in there with 1,000 properties to just handle lease violations. That's their life, right? We have another one that does tenant collections. That's all they do is tenant collections. But to answer your first question, how do you do it? The first thing you have to do is you have to know what is the system. So you have to actually take a flow chart and flow chart out what happens when in this system. This happens, then this happens, then this happens in a flow chart. After that's done, then you have to say, okay, what actually is done when you say contact tenant? Let's say it's an eviction, right? And the 4th of the month comes and now eviction notices go out. What does that mean? Who does that actual task? That is the expanded version that actually details the job description of how to actually send out a notice to vacate. Now, what happens is that is actually the start of your systems manual. And so you have a flow chart that just says send out eviction notices. Behind that, you have the systems manual that actually details that out. Finally, that is all wrapped up in a checklist format that you can have a checklist item so that you can go through, just like in the airline industry, just like in McDonald's, just like anywhere, you can systematize your business through the use of checklists. If they don't know how to do a certain task, they look up the systems manual, and in the systems manual, it's written. You have a video that actually shows you walking through how to do it from a screen video, and then you do screenshots. So I always recommend 3 things in a systems manual: written, video, and screenshots. That way, if for some reason that person leaves, it's very easy to retrain the next person. Here's the flow chart, here's the systems manual, and here's the checklist. Let me know if you have any questions. And if that's their vertical and that's what they do and that's all that they do, it's going to be very good. So we've learned the value of going deep and not going wide. And so for us, it's helped us, but it just depends on the size of the business. If you have one apartment complex, we have 18 virtual assistants. It may not make sense to have 18 VAs on staff. It may just be one, and they're going to be doing multiple tasks. So it depends on the size, obviously.
Now, why Mexico?
Good question. So we've used them from all over the world. The biggest reason I will tell you is, a few. Number one, same time zone. So we're not working on the backside of the clock. Number two, 50% of the VAs that work for us have either been to the US or have lived in the United States at some point in their life. They get the culture, they get the jokes, they get the verbiage, they understand what Chase Bank is. When you're dealing with people in Asia that have never seen a 3-2 garage, they don't even know what that means. They know the words, but they don't know what that actually is. So there's a lot of communication challenges with VAs on the other side of the world because they just don't understand what we're saying. They could be smart, they could know English, but my perception, for what it's worth, is when you hear that phone click and you hear someone with an Indian or Asian accent, you know it's going to be a VA on the other side. And all of a sudden, you go, I'm not talking to this company, now I'm talking to an outsource. When you're dealing with someone from Mexico, you really don't know. I mean, honestly, they don't have much of an accent. And if you heard someone with a little bit of a Spanish accent, you probably wouldn't even think twice about it. More importantly, they are very proactive in their jobs. If they see a problem, they will actually come back and say, hey, the manual says this, I did this, it didn't work. So I fixed it, I revised the manual, and this is the way I think we should do it. And I'm like, okay, sounds good. I could never get that done when I used to use VAs in the Philippines. So the fact that they're proactive getting things done, and just as you said, you hire one, and that one then trains the new ones that come on. So it's a scalability model. So that's why we did it. And it's been, I mean, we've been doing it for several years. And as I said, we started placing them for other people. And it's just been fantastic because it really is a way that people feel comfortable scaling. And I mean, we have them, they actually come to our office. Like they'll come up for training for a week or two, or we'll go down there for a Christmas party. So we're able to actually interact with them personally, where they come up and they kind of understand the operation. They're seeing it. And so it really does help the communication and the training level as well.
Some great tips right there. I love that. And so something we use, and I don't know if you all use this for the video portion, is Loom. It's a free, it's free, and you can make a video of your screen and yourself and your audio and make some great training videos to be able to hand off to VAs. No, great tips there. And so do you have somebody in the U.S. that's helping manage all the VAs?
Yeah, we have someone in the U.S. We also have someone in Mexico. We actually created a corporation in Mexico. So we have people down there that find them, recruit them. So we hire them based on disc profile. We do English fluency tests. So we make sure that the person we're placing, either for us or for other companies, that it is exactly what that person wants. So we're able to really nail it down as to what the role is, and whether it's a social media, whether it's accounting, whatever the case may be. We've had fantastic, just phenomenal results by placing them with other people, because all of a sudden they say, man, I cannot believe how much time X or Y took me. Now that I'm not doing that, it's amazing how much free time I have to think or to scale my business. Because look, you and I both know that a lot of times we get caught up in the weeds of stuff, right? You don't realize it until you're out of the weeds going, man, I cannot believe that I did that all the time. And then when you're out of it, now you can do what a real business owner does, which is think and strategize and be that leader as opposed to being the doer. So it's, again, sometimes it's baby steps. Sometimes, like, I have one that she's my personal assistant. So she takes care of all my flights. She handles my calendar. She takes care of anybody, anytime emails me, she will take care of it. She will set up the meetings, or she'll set it up with someone else. Just those minutes of me answering emails it's amazing how much time it actually frees up. You don't realize it.
What should we plan to pay these VAs from Mexico and to do the things at this level that you're talking about?
Depending on the role, you're probably looking at anywhere between $6 and $9 an hour for the job. So depending on the level and role that you're doing, but if you plan that, you're going to be in good shape. Great,
and that's cheap. I mean, that's cheap to get that stuff done, right?
Yeah, depending on where you're at and what state. I mean, it really is. It's truly a way to scale. Like I said, I mean, we took our payroll from 59% down to 33% because we were able to outsource it. So, I mean, it shows that it does work. The model works. It's just a matter of it works as good as the preparation in creating the model for success.
Great. Well, we're about out of time, so just a couple more questions, Steve. But what's a way that you've recently improved your business that we could apply to ours that we haven't talked about outside of VAs?
I would say one of the ways that we've improved our business is we do the look back. So a lot of times we're so busy working, you forget what you've done. We've gone back and done like I wouldn't even say a 2.0, I'd say a 3.0 and revised. So just because you did it once, what worked for us at 500 doors doesn't work at 1,000 now. So you got to go back, right? There's always a circle back. Never think you can set it and forget it. The fact that we've gone back and revamped and revised systems and, that worked back in 2016, but that's really not relevant now. That has really helped us get the kind of hose through the pump even more, I guess you could say, of volume. So going back and revisiting old systems, old marketing plans, old strategies really is helpful. So sometimes you got to go backwards to go forward is what I've learned.
What's the number one thing that's contributed to your success?
I would say never giving up. Without a doubt, never giving up. I've just been fanatical on never quitting. I'm just one of those guys. I don't quit. I mean, I am a hard worker. I bust my butt. I do a lot. I mean, I wrote a book. I'm an airline pilot. People say, how do you do it? I'm like, I do not give up. I will never give up. But I don't think I need to be the hardest worker in the room. I'm good at leveraging and I'm good at doing that, but I never give in. I'm never satisfied with where I'm at.
Wow. Well, amazing interview, Steve. You've provided some just great content that I know the listeners and I have learned a lot from, and really motivating us to outsource more, right? Which is so important to growing and scaling quickly and making sure everything's still getting done. And so, but tell the listeners how you like to give back.
Sure. Well, actually, we give back. One of the ways that we give back is we give back to veterans. We actually do a thing where we donate in Houston, here in Houston, Texas. There's a thing called Camp Hope. And so they help veterans with PTSD. And so every time we meet with a client, we donate a meal to feed a veteran. And so every time, whether we get the client or not, it doesn't matter. Every single time that we meet with a client, we donate a meal to feed a veteran, and we give it to Camp Hope. And, they come to our office, they come to meetings, we have them present at events, who they are, what they do. And we just feel it's the right thing to do. And we are fanatical about making sure that we can put them, as high as we can on the pedestal to thank them.
Wow. I appreciate you sharing that. And I appreciate you giving back in that way, being a veteran myself. And I'm grateful for that.
Well,
but
thank
tell
you
the listeners, you're welcome. You're welcome. And tell the listeners how they can get in touch with you and learn more about your company.
Sure. They can find me. I'm all over social media. So they can go to Rozenberg, Steve, Rozenberg, on Instagram. They can find me on Facebook, Steve Rozenberg. There. They can also go to my website, steverozenberg.com. Again, it's Rozenberg. There you can find, I have manuals, I have systems. I don't know if I have one. I wrote a book. Let me see if I can find it here. Yeah, I wrote a book, Failing My Way to Millions. I'll send you a copy, Whitney, so you have it.
That'd be great.
It's actually on Amazon. But yeah, I'm out there. I'll tell you what, I have so many people that reach out to me, and I always give back. They ask me questions. They find me on Messenger, on Instagram, all that. I'm always available. Look, I don't need to make money off someone to help them, because no one was there to help me. And I've always made it a point to always say, if I ever got to that point, I would never forget where I came from. And I would always give back to people that ask me for help. So I'm very helpful with people, just to, they have a question here, a question there. Absolutely. I just love doing it, because to me, it's helped me grow even more exponentially.
Thank you for listening to the Real Estate Syndication Show, brought to you by Life Bridge Capital. Life Bridge Capital works with investors nationwide to invest in real estate, while also donating 50% of its profits to assist parents who are committing to adoption. Life Bridge Capital, making a difference, one investor and one child at a time. Connect online at www.lifebridgecapital.com for free material and videos to further your success.